She picked me up by the neck and tossed me across the room. Ask Reddit on Reddit Rundown. What was the craziest reason a teacher at your school got fired? I went to high school in the early 80s in a tiny rural Appalachian town 35 miles from the closest traffic light. We had classes that taught auto mechanics. One that taught carpentry, had a motorcycle riding class and a rifle shooting class and classes for welding and machine shop with lathes and milling machines, etc. The teacher of the machine shop got arrested for making silencers for the mafia. And half the stuff he had us making as class projects on the lathes and milling machines were items he used in making them. A professor at my college was placed on administrative leave because he was charged with participating in the Rwandan genocide, and was deported shortly after. He ended up being found not guilty, although I think he's still in a Rwandan prison for denying that the genocide happened. A history teacher I had in high school gave us a lot of random documentary/movie days, during which she would just sit in the back at her desk drinking tea. The year after I graduated, she had a movie day, and when the film ended, she didn't get up or do anything but sit there, eyes closed. Fearing the worst, some students went to the office and brought an administrator down who found she was passed out drunk. They found bottles in her desk. Our teacher was a chronic liar and lied about having a master's and a degree. Funny thing is she actually did have a relevant degree that would have got her the job. Other lies include dating Brad Pitt, being an ex-gang member, and even being a multimillionaire but just enjoying teaching. Our AP calculus teacher in high school had a mental break, ranted for an entire class period about some nonsense, then drank an entire bottle of salsa, stormed out and never came back. They had a substitute for the rest of the semester, which was unfortunate since the sub wasn't a calculus teacher, so they were at a disadvantage for the AP test. 25 years ago, at my all-boys Catholic high school, a priest was accused/caught molesting a student. Of course, this wasn't a firing offense for a priest back then, it was just hushed up. The guy was creepy as hell. Earlier this year I read about him in the paper, a fresh round of allegations. He was allowed to keep on going for another 25 freaking years. My middle school history teacher, Mr. Lewis, used to invite me and some of my friends, all girls, into his room before classes. Since otherwise we had to stay in the incredibly cramped hallway, this was desirable, especially when he let us play with Cleverbot on his desktop. Mr. Lewis was pretty weird. He only ever wore velvet suits with pocket squares, and sometimes he'd randomly start crying in the middle of class. Weirdest of all, he'd make us listen to his love poetry, dedicated to his dead wife, who we later learned did not and had not existed. In retrospect, that love poetry was definitely for us. Specifically, it was for one of us, my friend Ruth, who looked notably younger than your average 12-year-old. He'd always ask her to write notes on the blackboard and stare at her while she did it. The rest of us noticed Ruth was Mr. Lewis' favorite, but it didn't strike us as that weird. Well, one day, it was only Ruth who got to school early, the rest of us didn't come till later. She went into Mr. Lewis' room, and I guess he tried something. Luckily, I don't think it got very far. He was put on leave. They brought him back a year later. Fun. Back when I was in high school, I had a history teacher who looked like Santa Claus and for the most part was a cool and funny dude. He made jokes most of the class and kept it pretty entertaining while still being informative. Well, one day there was this tall curly-haired 9th grade kid who was being loud and obnoxious in the hall, and so Santa teacher went out and asked him to stop as the kid was disrupting his class. Kid didn't listen, so he stepped out of the class and asked him nicely to stop talking so loud in the hallway. Now, I'm not exactly sure what the kid said to him, but whatever it was caused my teacher to lose it and punched the kid right in the eye and held him against the locker like the stereotypical bully does to the nerd in TV shows and movies. Kid ended up with a black eye and broken nose, and my history teacher was soon fired after that. Turns out my teacher had a bit of a mean streak that popped up every blue moon. Apparently, he almost fought a bus driver who was about to leave a student who was running late from their last class. My band teacher resigned and fled back to his home state but ended up getting arrested on federal charges. He was having sex with band students on trips, and some of them were across state borders. His house was searched and he had videos. He got 45 days in jail. His parents are affluent and was able to push the trial out several years before eventually pleading guilty. This was after a band assistant was fired for dating a 16-year-old trumpet player while 33. The principal resigned amongst all this. Okay, I don't know about fired. But we had this amazing teacher who made AP Lit in 11th grade a blast. He had Pillsbury Doughboys all over the classroom since he had a pretend conspiracy, they were always watching you. He made us hug a tree and sing the SpongeBob theme song during a fire drill. He played us a song related to a poem and climbed through the ceiling during the crescendo, and when I went to interview him for a school article he opened his classroom door, that was locked, classroom was dark, and he was brushing his teeth with a weird hat on and no sink in sight, refused to stop brushing his teeth while being interviewed. He also had a class feud with another teacher that escalated to him and our class chasing her down the hallway with a chair overhead. But here's the thing, years later I heard he got arrested because he attempted to enter a city council meeting without an invitation and refused to back down. TLDR, my high school teacher was random, funny, eccentric, and got arrested trying to attend a city council meeting. He threw pencils at students. One day he threw a chair at a girl who annoyed him. Serious anger management issues. And then they found the child porn on his computer at school. Rumor was that he had also been grooming one of the student aides. I haven't heard a thing about him since the year he disappeared. Probably not that crazy, but a history teacher who made sexually explicit commentary/jokes directed largely at female students on multiple occasions. Showed multiple R-rated films that had nothing to do with the curriculum, without getting parental consent. This was 6th grade, so we were 12 years old or so. He also really liked to talk about the Nanking Massacre. In graphic detail. Especially the sexual parts. Complete with pictures he put up on the projector. He devoted multiple days to it. I never got confirmation that that was what got him fired. But that was everything that I had documented with times and dates and brought up to the principal very shortly before he was never seen at school again. Didn't get fired, but should have. 9th grade, room of angsty teens gets a new English teacher. Mrs. Stevens, motherfucking, read. This English teacher likes 3 things: Jesus, pouring pills down her autistic son's throat, and Anne Rice. During class when talking about an assignment, a couple students talked about a student who attempted suicide and the teacher had enough. She got up and explained how to properly cut your wrist to a whole class. What an educational experience. I had a teacher, really nice teacher, who had bad anger management issues. When he went angry, he would literally flip tables, he would go berserk, scream and flip tables left and right. Eventually he kind of disappeared. When I asked my principal about him, he said that Mr. X is on leave. Never seen him again. He was really nice guy and good teacher, too bad my classmates drove him insane. I bet a bunch of this will be made up or blatant lies. I've taught for 11 years and only one teacher was fired at the schools I worked at, which were/are huge. He was fired for punching another teacher after school, only adults witnessed this. Some teachers quit because of various reasons and they all had rumors spread about the reason they were fired. None were even remotely true since all of the teachers quit on their own merit. Actual true firings will likely be the teachers fucking students that got arrested and shown on the news. Source, teacher. My kindergarten teacher picked me up by the neck and tossed me across the room. She wasn't actually fired, just not allowed to teach kindergarten again. Instead, she taught 2nd grade. She was my teacher that year, too. In her defense, odds are pretty good that I had it coming. Guy wasn't my teacher, but I was a student while he was at the school and he was fired after I graduated. Teacher taught one of the higher level sciences and after class he noticed one of his students left a notebook. He opens it to look for a name and eventually finds one, but not before he comes across a draft of a suicide note. Teacher has been around for many years and is tenured, so he decided to try and confront the student and help her get help. The student is a junior, 16-year-old girl, and tries to convince her to go to therapy. Girl wants to and tried to get her parents to take her, but parents won't because they think depression and mental illness is BS. This made the teacher make the executive decision to cross the professional/personal line and gives the girl his cell phone number and tells her to contact him when things get bad and he'll be an ear to listen and give the best help he can. Parents get word of this and tell him to cease contact with their daughter, otherwise they will escalate to his superiors. Teacher tries to convince parents to listen to daughter while he has their ear, but they won't listen, claiming it's just how teens are and she won't do shit, so they don't feel the need to take her to get help. Well, girl reaches out to teacher on a particularly bad day, and teacher talks her off the cliff again, and parents found out. Teacher gets fired for unprofessional relationship with a young female student. Teacher gets shunned and vilified by community because it's assumed he diddled a teen girl, when in reality he helped a girl survive long enough to find help when her parents left her on an island to suffer by herself. As much as I hate that the teacher was punished for helping save a life, the relationship between himself and the student was indeed unprofessional, as it was too close and the parents had told him to stop. He should have gone to his supervision for school-sanctioned advice so he could help the girl and cover his own ass. TLDR, teacher stops girl from killing herself in the wrong way, gets fired for it. A male coach was having sex with one of the female students. She was under 16. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison. That is not all. A female teacher helped keep it a secret. The female teacher left the job, spent a few days in jail, but mostly went unscathed due to her cooperation in the investigation. She did lose her license. So, in about 6th or 7th grade, normally you would do the normal school things. Learn? Well, our teacher didn't really want to do that, so when it was about time for lunch, I was in detention BTW, I got dismissed and I went to the classroom to see the teacher. Fucking one of the students in our class. They got fired like a week later, and the person they fucked just moved schools, I guess. Meth. I had 2 teachers get fired for it. One after I graduated high school and one when I was in 10th grade. When I was in 10th grade, our former 6th grade science teacher was busted for meth. She failed a drug test. Interestingly, I found out from my teacher, who would later get fired for meth. After I graduated, my former teacher was pulled over driving under the influence and they found a bunch of drugs including meth in his possession. Another instance, though not a full-time teacher, was a substitute who was a certifiable cunt got busted for meth. Said part is her husband bit the dust due to cooking a bad batch. She never substituted again. 7th grade teacher retired after he threw an object at a student. The cops were called because the teacher claimed the student had hit him, but it was him that assaulted the student. The other students backed up the accused and even reported the teacher having a bottle of Jack in his desk. Lo and behold, they searched his desk and found a bottle of Jack. This teacher was already famous for paddling kids for smiling in his class. He had done so for years. Another teacher was fired for fucking my friend's underage family member. They got caught in the school parking lot fooling around. Ironically, the teacher's father also got fired for fucking kids from another school district. I guess you can say the apple didn't fall too far from the tree. This happened around my senior year of college. A special education helper was fired for throwing a kegger at her house for the girls' basketball team. She wasn't technically a teacher, but she assisted with special needs kids. The girls had just won a big game, so she decided to throw them a nice party. The next day was awkward as fuck at school. I'm sure there's more that I am unaware of. He had a bag of female students' hair in his desk. I still don't know what to make of it. He was one of the best and most well-liked teachers and coaches. I spent a lot of time with him due to sports, as did a lot of my friends and classmates, and he was never inappropriate. Not once. I've never spoken to anyone who has anything but positive memories of him. In high school, for PE, our teacher took us canoeing. Instead of checking the weather, he brought 15 freshmen into the channel our school was on. A severe thunderstorm hit, and our teacher paddled safely back to school and left us teens in the water. We tied our canoes together and rowed back to school, but we were drenched and super late. Our teacher was just standing on the dock, not a care in the world. He got fired like 2 days later. She was involved in a murder. No, she didn't kill anyone. She was one of the last people that were seen with the victim. She was the victim's best friend. News reporters kept on showing up to my school to try to get any words they could from my teacher, and as you can imagine it became a huge distraction for the students. It was sad. The case became pretty famous in my home state, and a law was created in the victim's name. He left his laptop open in class while teaching and a student found child porn on it while trying to play a prank. Cops promptly found stashes of the stuff at his house when they investigated further. Was arrested and is now in prison as far as I know. He taught students aged 11 to 16, organized a student choir, and was even the main teacher for some of the younger classes. This was well publicized in the local media at the time. Not just a vile pedo, but a fucking dumb one at that. He left his laptop open in class while teaching and a student found child porn on it while trying to play a prank. Cops promptly found stashes of the stuff at his house when they investigated further. Was arrested and is now in prison as far as I know. He taught students aged 11 to 16, organized a student choir, and was even the main teacher for some of the younger classes. This was well publicized in the local media at the time. Not just a vile pedo, but a fucking dumb one at that. He left his laptop open in class while teaching and a student found child porn on it while trying to play a prank. Cops promptly found stashes of the stuff at his house when they investigated further. Was arrested and is now in prison as far as I know. He taught students aged 11 to 16, organized a student choir, and was even the main teacher for some of the younger classes. This was well publicized in the local media at the time. Not just a vile pedo, but a fucking dumb one at that. Thanks for listening to Reddit Rundown. Give a thumbs up and subscribe, and help me get to 1,000 subs. Leave a comment below on what kind of topics or stories you would like to hear. You can also check out other videos on my channel. Thanks and have an awesome day.